If you've ever wondered why your website isn't bringing in the right clients, today's guest is going to open your eyes. With over 25 years in digital marketing and real-world results to back it up, Barb Davids is here to break down what SEO actually means for your business and why most people get it wrong. Barb is the founder of Compass Digital Strategies and host of the Small Business Sweet Spot podcast. She's worked with countless service providers, simplifying SEO into practical steps. Today, we dig into what really happens behind the scenes when you pay someone to do SEO, why backlinks matter, and how something as small as a meta description can change whether Google or even AI tools like ChatGPT surface your content to the right people. She also shares why formatting your podcast show notes into blog-style posts instead of dumping a transcript can make a major difference in discoverability. Barb's all about clarity, not fluff. She even put together a website power-up plan, which is a concrete, personalized set of steps to start optimizing your site immediately. Normally, it's just $99, but today you get a special discount code exclusively for listeners of this show. By the end of this conversation, you'll know exactly what changes to make on your website, how to repurpose your podcast content for maximum SEO impact, and how to start attracting the clients you actually want.
You're listening to Podcasting for Financial Professionals, the show where smart advisors, planners, CPAs, and money experts learn how to use podcasting as their most powerful marketing tool. I'm Virginia Elder, podcast strategist and founder of Podcast Abundance. Since 2019, I've helped financial professionals stop wasting time on random marketing tactics and instead build a podcast that increases authority, expands reach, and consistently drives leads. Before we jump in, I've got something that will change the way you think about your podcast. The most important 30 seconds of your show happens right after someone hits play. And most hosts have no idea what to say, how to make an impact, or how to capture the right listener that quickly. That's why I created the Attraction Messaging Blueprint, your simple guide to crafting a strong trailer, a tight 30-second intro, and a clear outro that actually generates leads for your business. Grab yours today at podcastabundance.com/attraction messaging blueprint.
Hey, Barb, thanks for joining me today. I'm really excited about doing this with you.
Hey, Virginia, thanks for having me. I am so excited to share all the things.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about Compass Digital Strategies and your core purpose, how you help, because I think there are some financial folks out there that might need some guidance with their website. So that's why you're on today.
Yes, I started because I couldn't get answers myself. So I used to be in digital marketing in the corporate world, and I would hire out people like me. And it would just frustrate the heck out of me that they couldn't tell me what they were doing with the website so that I could, effectively tell my bosses what was going on and follow up with what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
It was very hush hush, very quiet. And I just felt like, okay, what am I paying you for?
Yeah.
Could you just tell me what is going on?
Yeah.
I need to be able to justify the cost. And so then at one time, it just sort of kind of came into my idea that I wanted to work anytime, anywhere. And so I decided to start my own business is the short story. And I was doing professional fitness photography for a little while. And so kind of all this kind of culminated at the same time. And I started looking into doing digital marketing for myself, for my photography business. And the funny thing is that I never really looked at it from that perspective before, that specific industry. And so I was looking around for information specifically, how do you do images? How do you do these other things? And it was so confusing. And I thought, holy crap, how are photographers even figuring this out? So I kind of started in that industry. And then I learned that more small businesses were having a lot of trouble trying to figure out What should they do? What shouldn't they do? There's so much information out there. How do you know what's right for your business and what should you work on? Because everybody claims their way is the right way. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. And now I'm just helping solopreneurs get more website visibility.
Very cool. Yeah, I think this is super helpful, especially for those who aren't tied to their brokerage website. Like there are some professions where they're kind of stuck and those websites are so bad. So if you can possibly get an OBA situation, outside business activity going on, and you're able to do your podcast, able to market your own book, and able to offer services outside, let's say your advisory, or different, ideal client here is that maybe they're a bookkeeper, maybe they're a CPA, and they do have the freedom to create their own website and create their own design. But we're still always faced with that thing of like, okay, I know I want traffic because that's like the keyword, like website traffic. But if I hire an SEO person, like what are they actually doing? Like I don't see anything changing. Like I don't know what they're doing in the background. It is like this black box, like you described, of like you're paying maybe thousands a month. Like it could be very high. And maybe they're able to show you the chart that like, it's going up and you're getting more traction, but it feels very secretive and invisible. So could you give us just a few clues about what could be happening behind the scene? Like what should we be asking them to do or double checking that they're doing for us?
Yes, I can totally tell you all of that.
Okay.
So let's start with price, because that's the biggest question that everybody has. How much should it be costing me? How much should I invest in SEO? And the first answer is it depends on how much budget you do have and how aggressive you want to be with SEO. So just like a lot of different services, it's going to range all the way from $50 a month, $5 an hour, whatever it may be for all of the services out there on all of the platforms, all the way up to $5,000, $10,000 a month. I think generally speaking, though, SEO is about making sure that your website is optimized. And it's also the same for AIO. So we do have to talk about that a little bit too, showing up in AI search results in Perplexity or ChatGPT. A lot of that is still the same as regular SEO. It really boils down to having great content, talking to the people in your audience and solving their problems. That's always, always, always what it comes back to. Now, there's things that you can do on your website to optimize it, to help Google find your website, because just having it there doesn't elicit it to be findable, basically, from Google. So you have to do certain things for all of the search engines to find you. And that's what they're doing typically when somebody says SEO. So the first part is they're going to make some adjustments on your website. And that means like the page titles and the page descriptions. So when you go type in financial advisor in Chicago or whatever on Google or in search results or whatnot, I guess I'll stick with Google for this one because they do look different. But on the Google one, there's the title and then there's a little description. That is the SEO page title and the SEO description. So a lot of the times, when web designers do redesigns or somebody says, I'm doing SEO, that's essentially what they're talking about. Like that's the first and foremost, always the thing they're talking about. But that's not all there is. And that's where I think a lot of people get a little confused. Like, okay, if you're doing that, well, what else are you doing for the other 11 months that I'm giving you my money? And sometimes what it is in the background, they'll change the code or they'll add code to a page. It's kind of like geek speak almost, and it's called schema. And sometimes you can put like code on the page. Sometimes, you see those FAQ question errors and things on the pages and they like drop down. You can put that in another way for Google to see it. And there's also things called like local business schema. And it's just basically code that you put on the page that Google reads. It's almost like, when Google comes to your website and it sees your address, it sees your phone number, it sees all this information, it does that by scanning your page. But when you put this code in, you're like explicitly saying, this is my phone number, this is my business. And so it's kind of a shortcut for Google to understand a little bit better. But once you do that, then what, right? Like that's the next step. So that's like on page type of thing. And then I think what I like to think of is it moves into content marketing, because really what SEO is building out blog posts, building more context and getting in front of people with the questions that they're answering. So when you build a website, it can't just sit there and be there. we have to answer questions that people have, like when they're going into Google, in order to come up when they're searching for us. Because there's so many people, like if you type in financial advisor, how does Google know to choose yours over somebody else's? And with that, that's a blog usually. Now, there's a lot of other factors that SEO uses, and that's like backlinks is one of them. You'll hear that probably a lot, where if you go to, let's say, a networking event and they talk about everybody that was there, and for some reason they want to link back to your website, that would be a backlink. And so the more of those that you get, it feels like more of a vote for your website, and Google really likes that. There's some shady things that we can talk about on the good and the bad of that as well. But essentially, that's SEO. So making sure that the messaging on your website is good. There's a lot of content on there that Google can find you, or the AIs can find you. And then what else was I just going to say about that? Oh, like the messaging itself. So the other part of SEO that people don't really maybe understand, it's not just about the traffic. It's about if they convert, right? I mean, you're putting all this money into the website. If they're coming to your website and they're not actually taking an action that you want them to take, then what's the point? So making sure that that copy on the page not only satisfies Google and says, hey, I know what I'm talking about, but it also helps when the user like comes to your website and they're like, whoa, this person, this is who I need to talk to.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I love that quick, high level, easily to understand explanation. I think you helped us all out quite a bit there. So one of the questions that came to my head while you were sharing that is, you mentioned the content piece. Of course, that's what you're doing when you decide to launch a podcast, or let's say you started out blogging, or you're doing something to try to create some content because you're answering questions that people bring you constantly and you get tired of answering the same thing. And so, of course, the most efficient way to save yourself time there is to create a blog post, a podcast episode, a YouTube video, something where you can direct them to that. So as you are creating this content, you're getting these quote unquote votes for your site, which I like how you put it that way. Is there a frequency that is favored, or is there any kind of tip that you have that's like, how often should we be adding new stuff to our site?
Hey there, quick sidebar to this episode. Most business owners jump into podcasting with a concept and maybe even a guest list, but zero plan or comfort with what they're going to say during their intro, outro, or trailer. And these are the most important segments for your podcast because they either hook your ideal listener or lose them fast. The Attraction Messaging Blueprint fixes that. Inside, you'll learn the 4 key components for writing a memorable intro, a snappy outro, and a powerful trailer episode. You get examples, space to draft and refine your scripts, and a final checklist so you don't miss a thing. If you want your podcast to stand out and actually generate leads for your business, this is where your strategy starts. Download it for free today at podcastabundance.com/attraction-messaging-blueprint.
That is the second most asked question ever. So you're right on track.
Yay!
Yeah. Actually, no, there is no answer for that either. However, generally speaking, as I've done it with clients, I kind of go back and forth between what kind of energy we have to output the information and what would be great for Google. But there's been so many varying examples out there. There's some people that put out something like every 6 months, every year, something like that, because it's way longer and it's way more research-based. There's a lot more information to it. And then there's some people that put out things daily. Well, that's just a lot. And then also that when you're putting out stuff daily, typically you're not going to have as much substance either. I mean, just humanly possible, right? Like now we're in this era where people are mass creating content and it's just crap. It's just regurgitated same thing. It's not like really personable. It's not like the person is putting in their own thoughts into it. And I hope that, I guess I don't hope, I know that Google and everybody will figure it out at some point. So we'll have like real stuff out there. But generally speaking, monthly is just fine. So you can gain traction if you're pushing something out monthly. The kicker to that is how much substance there is to it. So if you're doing something like, let's say you're doing a blog post and you're doing like maybe 300 to 500 words, maybe it's like because your podcast is very short. Like mine is super, super short. Like mine is less than 10 minutes per episode on the weekly ones. And so my blog posts are very short. However, then I do it differently, right? I don't just put the transcript in there, but my blog posts are actually 1,200 words long. So it gives Google a little bit more context. There's no set length really, but I like to think of maybe at least 800 to 1,200, because when I've done the smaller ones, you could just feel there wasn't a lot of oomph behind there, or like it was just too surface level, and surface level doesn't answer questions. So I think doing some longer ones is good. If you can do weekly, if it fits the brand, if what you're talking about, that's great, but you can do monthly is just as well.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for answering that the way you did, because one of the top questions I get is, how often do I need to publish an episode? And so it's a very similar train of thought, and a very similar answer. So I appreciate
How do you answer that question?
It depends. It depends. Again, it goes back to, what is our strategy with the show? Like, what is your goal, for your brand with this content? How often are you getting questions? Do you have a list of 50 questions that you want to answer? Maybe you want to do a weekly show for a year and get all those 50 out. It just really depends. Are we doing interviews? What are we doing? And what is the strategy behind it? And what's your energy and time look like? If you're facing a stacked calendar and you have one day a month to record, they might not be very long episodes, or it might just be 2 episodes a month or 1 episode a month. It depends on all of these factors. So very similar story there between us.
Yes. Yeah.
So I have always encouraged my podcasters to download a plugin, and sometimes I'm setting it up for them, to where when we publish, the show notes are automatically pushed to the website as a blog. A lot of times we can finagle the plugin to where it pulls in the YouTube video, or at least the podcast player for that episode, so that when you publish, not only is an episode going out on podcast apps and YouTube, but you're having content posted to your website. So are there any adds that you have to that process that you want to suggest? Should we be looking at going in there after the fact and adjusting the title or anything? Should it be different?
It doesn't need to be different. It would depend on whether or not you have a blog strategy already. So if you already have a blog strategy, you might want to consider changing it a little bit, because they might overlap and you don't really want duplicates. It doesn't really benefit the website or benefit your search engine optimization or being found. So if you're doing it just from the podcast, I think doing it a little bit does help, because people don't search the same way when they listen as when they're typing stuff into Google. So they might be typing it into Google a different way, but it might be the same content. So you might want to check the title a little bit, but then also, like, when you put the information on there, to check it. I'm not quite sure of the plugin that you use and how direct it goes, but sometimes when we pick up things like transcripts and just push them on there, it doesn't help the reader experience. And so because people are not looking for blog posts on websites, but what this really does is help the context of your website for Google and getting found in AI search, because there's more information on there. So if you can pick up the transcript, but then modify it so it's kind of like written and read, so you have your headlines and you have your paragraphs, and you throw in an image here and there or a quote, like your particular website with the blog post that you guys have that you've put up, it looks great. Like, it has all kinds of, like, I could skim it and I could read it and I could listen to it and I could go check out other blogs. And then more importantly, the most important thing, which people always forget, is when you get down to the bottom to add a call to action. So, but just one. So that way, because it's a little bit different when you're listening, you may add a couple different things. But when you're on the blog post, they can only do one more thing. Like they can only do one thing. So you want to put like either go to this other episode or download the thing or check out my newsletter or whatever that next step may be. But more times than not, a lot of people are not even going to be going from the podcast to the blog post. The blog post is essentially more for getting found on search. But it's nice to have the extra show notes there because like for me, I actually don't put a lot of links in my actual show notes. I don't know if that's right or wrong. I make them go to my blog post. So that way I only have one place to do my links and I know that they're all there and I don't have to go update my show notes thing. I've been going back and forth on that one. But I think too, the other thing that we think of is if you're already doing blog posts, you probably maybe already know about EAT. It's a sort of signal for Google. It's experience, expertise, authority, and trust. So if you're not doing already a blog post and thinking about those things and showing that credibility to Google, it would be a good idea to think about those things when you're pushing your podcast to your blog posts. So things like a bio at the end of all of your blog posts. So if you're pushing your podcast to a blog post, at the bottom, it has like a bio of who you are, what you do, your face. So that way people can know you're credible. There's a contact form. There's various different signals that you can say that this is a trustworthy website. This is a trustworthy podcast. It's not just pushing out content for the masses for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is do not just push your transcript or copy and paste to your website. And the logic there is nobody wants to read that. Yeah. Like seriously,
it's hard to read.
Nobody wants to read that unless you are looking for like, oh, like they said the specific term, maybe one episode you were defining very specific financial or legal terms. They might go searching for like, what did you say and how did you spell it? And let's just cross our fingers and hope that the AI that you were using to create your transcript actually heard you correctly so that it's written correct. So that's the other challenge, right? But yes, I appreciate that you noticed because we do for my show and for all of our clients, we write our show notes with H2 and H3 titles, with bullet points, with quotes, with different things, like you said, so that it's skimmable, whether someone is trying to look at that in their teeny tiny, like little podcast app and, trying to make it expand to see more, or whether they do go visit your website. I want it to look and act like a blog post and then, have a way that you can access the transcript. But I do not expect people to just sit there and be reading the transcript and nobody should. So thank you for highlighting that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
What is another big maybe issue that you see really often? In this case, I'm thinking, okay, you're looking at somebody who's trying, right? They've got their website up, they've started a podcast, they've installed a plugin to push the podcast. So you've got a blog post going up, let's just say weekly, and they're trying. What is something that you see that's missing or not quite right, however often?
I think probably after the no call to action, that's the biggest one for sure. And just the formatting. The other one is images and just the visual design of it. A lot of people will just push up like the cover art or something like that. And I think having some more in the blog post, and I could do a better job at this too. I'm not saying that mine are even perfect, so don't go look at mine. But but like sometimes if there's like an extra, like let's say you talk about something like I'm going to talk about journaling at some point. I have an actual journal, and instead, because you can't put that on a podcast, I'm actually going to put that picture in the blog post so that if somebody were curious, they can see what that might look like. And I do that too sometimes with charts or information, especially like in the financial world, is if you're talking about formulas or if you're talking about lists or something like that, it might be better on the blog post to be able to show some of that in a visual format. So that's something that you can add, because you can also add on the images, and it's called image alternative text. And that also does really well for SEO. It actually stands for, it's like image alt text. So like in the background, when you upload an image, you can add image alt text. And it's basically saying, if somebody couldn't see this image, how would you describe it? And it started because of accessibility readers. And so people who were having the things read out to them, all the things on the page, this is a blue background, this is a photo of so-and-so sitting on a beach, reading their journal, whatever, that tells them exactly what's in the image. But Google does use that image alt text to help it understand more context on the page. So if you also fill that out, that's a place that people could probably do more opportunity to optimize their website.
Yeah. Yeah. So not only thinking about accessibility, which is perfect because I had Maxwell Ivy on recently, and he's known as the blind blogger, and he will help, look at your website and have his reader go through it. And he'll tell you, like, I don't know what this says. I don't know what this image is. I don't know. And, just from an accessibility standpoint, his services that he offers now, like, help you get your website to where blind people might actually be able to digest your content, which I think is really useful for the, potential aging client that we might have in the financial services industry. So I think that's really cool. So thank you. You're the second person now to emphasize how important that is. So I want to let you highlight, how do you specifically help people with their websites?
In the short answer is I help them get more website visibility without doing paid ads. So I'm a firm believer in using organic methods, and I'm a firm believer in being able to do it in a way that doesn't take all of my mental capacity, basically. Because in the beginning, it was really hard for me to get out there. And even though I was kind of referring on referrals, basically, I was waiting for them to just come in. And I realized that that's just not enough. Like, that just cannot happen. You can't just put your website out there and hope that somebody is going to find it. So I help people understand what they need to do better to their website. I shouldn't say better, what they can do to optimize their website. Because a lot of times people just have these great websites. They just can't get it found because there's just some tweaking that we need to do. And a lot of times is with the blog post, making some adjustments to the blog post. Like I had an interior designer who had really great information. She was actually a writer, so it made it super easy. She didn't need to have another copywriter. But we just needed to tweak some things and add some words here and there to give it better context. Because like what you're thinking about is when somebody searches for a word, you want your website to come up. But if your website doesn't have those words, it's not going to come up. So we try to figure out what those words all might be. They might be, they could be hundreds of different phrases or things that people are thinking about. So I help people try to get their website in front of that. And then we also go through different marketing channels. So like, how can we repurpose the blog post into, say, Instagram, because a lot of people are there right now, or LinkedIn, and how does it look different? But how can you do it so that you're doing things once? And it's really great with podcasting. I love it with podcasting. Like, it is so much easier now because I do the podcast, and then I can create my newsletter, and then I can create my blog post, and then I can create my social. Like, that's just from one piece of content. It is the most sane way, I think, in my brain, because then I'm not trying to create one for this one for that one. So it's gotten a lot easier.
Yeah. Would you mind taking us a little behind the scenes and sharing how you repurpose your show? And we can dive straight in and talk about your show even. But yeah, like, how do you do that? What's the time commitment look like? Because I'm always encouraging people to repurpose, but I think some specifics are helpful for someone who isn't typically in the online business space and creating content and just used to those processes.
Yeah, it's still evolving. I keep finding new ways to do it and make it easier. So what I do is I actually write out what I want to say for my podcast. So I pretend like I'm saying it out loud so it sounds really like me. And then I go through and I try and say it, and then I record it. And then I take that and I put it in ChatGPT, and I have a custom prompt for myself that I say, hey, here's my transcript of something that I worked out. Can you please turn this into a blog post? Now, I've already put in my like brand blueprint, this thing that I have that I trained it on, that kind of thing. So it still tries to keep it in my tone. It's still not the greatest because it's my speaking voice and my written voice are way two different things. Like, they're just night and day. It's really funny. But so it takes it and creates a blog post for me. So people can just skim it. So then I create my blog post. I don't even title my podcast until I've actually, sometimes I do it before, sometimes I do it after. I guess it depends on my mood. A lot depends on my mood too. It just depends. But so then I put my blog post together, and then I put the title in there, and then I put my short description that is also used for my show notes. So it's a quickie little thing. And then I put my helpful links for the podcast. So I start my podcast saying, hey, if there's anything mentioned in here, it's going to be at such and such a website, and here's where you can find them. And so those links, those handy links, are at the very top of my blog post. So if somebody comes to the blog post, they can get the information right away. And then it jumps into, maybe you would like to hear it, because more than likely they're probably coming from somewhere not from a blog post, even though they can go there. So then I say you can listen to it on Apple, you can listen to it on Spotify, and I embed the code in the page. And then that's the day after it goes and airs, by the way. It just says TBD until that day. And then at the bottom, there's the whole blog post. And then I have a wrap-up section that is completely different than my podcast. So when I end the podcast episode, it gives them a takeaway. Like, what should they take away from this episode? It might be an action item. It might be a thought item. It's not any particular one thing. And then at the bottom, I also have my digital marketing tool recommended, because I love tools. I'm a tool geek. I just love them. And then another recommended podcast episode to listen to, because I'm such a podcast junkie. I'm like, hey, here's another one that's really good. It might be personal. It might be business. It's just something that I had listened to in the week or two prior. And then I put those also in the show notes links. But that piece at the bottom of the blog post, it ties them into either another episode that they can go to the blog post of that's related, or it will come to a mini service of mine, or maybe my newsletter, whatever fits the content. Like, I don't make it be any one thing. It really depends on what the content is. And then I think that's it at the bottom. But then I take that description, and that's what I put in my show notes. And then in the show notes, I also have a couple of signature pieces that I say, hey, there's a couple mini services. There's a digital marketing network, like a couple links of my things that I put in there. Mm-hmm. And I just copy paste them, and I change a link. So I do all kinds of tracking links too, so that I can see when people are coming from YouTube, if it's up there. If people are coming from the podcast, they come to my website, I have a tracking link that can see which episode they came from. So it's really helpful to me to see what the popular ones are. And then I publish it. Mm-hmm. Then the day after, I do the episode embeds, and then I create my socials. So I think there's a way to probably do this a little bit more streamlined at some point, but right now I just wait till after. But then afterwards I do, sometimes I do new podcast and put it on Instagram, but I'm learning that not a lot of people are going to leave Instagram platform. So I've been trying more to do carousels for some of them, if they're like listicle type podcast episodes. And then if they're not, sometimes I'll just do a reel. If I do video, I will snippet out some of the podcast pieces and literally just put captions on them, and then put like what we were talking about and where they can find more in the caption. So I like doing video ones more just because it's easier to output for social. But yeah, it kind of depends on my mood and what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, mood, energy levels, time. There's so much that our results depend on. So
yes, exactly.
I like what you said about the blurb at the bottom of your blog posts, how it is different than whatever you say in the show, because you're thinking about if someone is reading this page and they're, maybe they're have a question about this, they get their answers. What is the natural lead point, or like next question they might have, or like a natural transition to like another piece of your content, or at least something that you're recommending. So I really like that. And I would think Google appreciates that as well. Like whether it's a related post or a related topic, or since you asked this question, I bet this question is next, or something like that, where it's this logical step. So I really like that you said that.
Real quick, one of the things on that is the time on site. It is a real thing. So Google is specifically looks at, if somebody lands on your website, do they leave right away or do they stick around? So that's a natural kind of signal for them to see if your website is answering their questions. I don't think yet that the AI searches have really looked into that as much. I think it's still leaning towards how many people are recommending your website, with social mentions, with other website mentions, that kind of thing. And that may change someday. Like, for example, Gemini, I think, I can't remember now if that uses Bing index. Well, nobody optimizes for Bing SEO like Nobody's over there, but someday they might. And like Perplexity, they do a lot on like listicles, or they had it the last time I looked. So if there's a lot of articles out there that mention your name, then it's more likely that they will recommend you because you've been recommended by so many other people. So that's why making sure that you can get out more and get recommendations from other people is a good thing. It's kind of like the old days of PR, and except it's like digital PR now. So like how much digital street cred do you have? That does bode well. And it's really hard to do, like trying to get your name into other articles or getting mentions, or if you can get even mentioned in industry articles around financials or things that are complementary to your business, that's even better because it's so complementary. So they can see that you're in that space.
Yeah. Well, and I think depending on which type of shows you're guesting on and how well that host's team produces those show notes, but guesting is a great way to get backlinks to your website. And I was recently told by another like pro podcaster that he takes all of his guest spots that he's on and he asks them for the original recordings, and he will write his own show notes and edit up the episode. And he owns his own feed of all of these episodes that he's been on as a guest. And so he pushes those to his website too. So he's got like the guest situation going for him where the host is linking to him, but then he is also using the content from his guest spots. And you could tell this could get really complicated, right? Because you've got your own show, then you're guesting, and then you're also kind of hosting. It's almost like hosting your own sideshow of your own guest spots that you've done. So it can get really complicated, but I thought that was so interesting because he's like making sure that all of that content is working for him. So
yeah, that's a fabulous idea. I hadn't considered it because a lot of my content when I'm guesting is the same. So I'm trying to not duplicate content on my own website. However, it gives me some ideas of like, maybe I've said something quite, just a little bit different, and it would work on, say, LinkedIn or another platform that I'm not maybe doing a lot on, or maybe can just automatically go to like, I don't know, SlideShare. Is that still around? I don't know. But
well, so let's have you share with us about the AI optimization situation, because that's the new big question that, getting found on Google is one thing. And then Google changed its algorithm. I think it was like last year, 2 years ago. Then everybody felt bad about their traffic. And a lot of I know a lot of personal finance writers, and a lot of them have been out of work because Google's algorithm changed and a lot of the websites didn't favor the content that they were writing anymore. A lot of just big changes in the industry, but then now we have this AI storm that's happening. So how are we going to make sure we get found on AI? And you did share a little bit with us already, but are there any other tips that we could follow there?
Well, I have two thoughts off the top of my head. When you mentioned they didn't favor their content anymore, I would ask why. So there had to have been something that Google decided, hey, I'm going to rank somebody else over your website. And so that's a very clear indicator to say, okay, like have you used Google Search Console at all? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if your listeners have as well or not, but there's a tool called Google Search Console, and it allows you to figure out where in Google you rank and for what keywords, and then you can see the pages that are coming back. So if you take a look at that and you see that it's going down, that's a clear indicator. I mean, obviously, if you're looking at your analytics, or you can feel it just too, but you can get some numbers around, okay, is there a particular word? Is there a particular page? That kind of thing. But I think that's a clear indicator to say, okay, well, there's something about this that Google doesn't like, whether it's something on the eat side. So maybe there's something around expertise, authority, trust, that kind of thing. Maybe it thinks that it's too samey as other people. Maybe there's a way to make it unique, put some more experience side things in it, or case studies, or maybe even get some more links back to it, maybe rearrange the navigation or the architecture of the page. Because sometimes if it has trouble like figuring out where to go in the website, that could be a factor as well. So I would take a look at that. And the other one I would say is this is really the time for diversification. I think they talked about it a long, long, long time ago in marketing, but it's more important now to diversify how you're marketing because of what's happening, because we always relied on Google and now we can't. And it's not just because AI is in the mix. People are changing. Like the generations are changing in how they are searching. So people, I still don't believe TikTok is a search engine.
Yeah.
I just cannot believe it. I cannot believe it. But people do go there. But you know what? I am not going to go there for a financial advisor. I am not going to go there for a dentist. So clearly that's not going to be like, if I was one of those people, I would not put my marketing efforts there, but I would diversify and think more about like, where do I need to be? And it may be more networking. Networking is not as icky as it used to be, or I don't feel like it is when you think about it as in connection. And you're just trying to get to know other business owners and that kind of thing. So I think if you're seeing some real declines and you're not sure what to do with the website, take a good look at it, but get some other eyeballs on it. It doesn't have to be me. It could be anybody. It could be your friends. Hey, would you consider this a good article? Would you get good advice from this? Does it feel helpful? That kind of thing. And then diversify. So think about all the different things you could do. If you don't have a newsletter, try that. The podcasting is one of I think the best things. I'm kind of biased to podcasting. I do like podcasting a lot. I was such a geek and I listen to them all the time, like when I'm running, because it's just so easy to get the information. And then I'm like, yes, I'm going to do a podcast because I was looking for information for my field. I'm like, I don't need to know the backstory for everything. Just tell me how to do the thing. And so that's kind of how that started. And then, so there's all kinds of different things, newsletters, there could be ad space. I don't like to do paid ads. However, it is a nice way to kind of supplement while you're thinking about how to do organically. So for example, some of my clients, we run paid ads, but then it turns out that they ended up having such a good ROI on them and getting a return on them. We kept them, but it's not the only thing we do. Like we work on doing collaborations, we work on working with different trade industries. So like maybe joining a chamber or maybe contributing to summits. Some of these online summits, they have ways that you can contribute and sponsor them. And those dollars also vary, but you can get inside of some of those, but diversifying in some way so you're not just dependent on only the search.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, in this particular case, it was a lot of the large like finance websites. A lot of them are like spinoffs. Like Forbes had a bunch of like unaffiliated like spinoff websites where they would just have all kinds of content. And so you could get articles up there, but they were about, you could search that site for anything. And that
news.
That website started to be less favored because it was just like, it's not specific enough. Like you don't cover one topic, you cover 400. And so as those writers were employed for those types of sites, their work went away because management of those sites was not getting the traffic. And so of course people weren't clicking on their ads. So their revenue went down. So then they can't pay for the writers. And so it's a really unfortunate cycle that a lot of people are still stuck in. But with all that being said, if you are a financial service provider and you're looking for a writer and they are writing specific content for your site, for your financial services, that still works. It's
Absolutely.
just, it was kind of a good thing, honestly, that some of those larger sites were finally getting flagged for almost spam content. It's not quite, but just too many topics, too much variance. So it is still super powerful to have a writer, especially if you don't have the time to write for your own site. So just wanted to clarify that. You were going to tell us a little bit about AI and how to optimize, and maybe, I do want to get into your show. So if there's anything that you're doing or that you've talked about on an episode, feel free to just direct us there. But I think that's the biggest thing is like, how do I make sure that at some point I'm being found on ChatGPT, for example?
It will start with the website and just having the blog with the varying information around the service that you provide in all of the different questions. So making sure that all of the FAQs or anything that your clients ask, that it goes from all of those. So if you take like your whole service and break it down into like maybe phases, and then think about the questions in each side of those phases, and just putting those up each as a blog post is a great way to start. Because all of the AI searches out there, the Perplexity, the ChatGPT, they are getting their information from websites and or indexes such as Google, who uses websites. So everything comes from a website. So if you don't have a website, you're never going to get found there. Or if you don't have blog posts, that's the start of it. And then making sure that it just has really good information, and everybody goes, oh, well, what's helpful? Like, it's basically being you on there and not regurgitating the exact same thing as somebody else. So even if you have a frequently asked question that everybody's asking, you can still put that on your website, but put some specifics around a particular client. You don't have to name them, because obviously you can't for security reasons, but you can always put the context of what's happening for that particular client, because a lot of them will have a similar situation, and having that specific instance, that specific scenario really is helpful for someone else to see. And or maybe there's like a one-off case where, I'm not going to be able to pull one out of my head right away, but maybe there's a one-off case where somebody wanted to save money, but they couldn't for something, so they had to go this route. Like, talking about those instances really puts you as the expert or the authoritativeness for Google and for the AI searches. And then being able to get mentions is another big one right now. So if you can do either contributions to other articles, like with journalists, and there's a couple ways you can do that, but basically you're looking for opportunities to chime in for journalists to write about a topic. And then you give your authority, your perspective, and then they quote you, and then there's a link back to your website. So that's a really good one. The podcast guesting is another great one, because it's a link back to the website. Anytime you can write about things that people want to share, it just kind of goes back to that. People might have heard, make it shareable, make it be something that they want it to be about. Write about something that somebody else isn't talking about, and that people want to be like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that's happening. I have to send this to somebody. Then that will get shared, and then the more links you'll get back to the website. So if you do traditional SEO and do what you need to for your visitors, that is the core piece of also getting found in some of the AI search engines.
Okay, cool. So that really helps unpack the comment you said earlier about like regular SEO kind of is AIO. So it's,
so far,
yeah. So far at the time of recording, folks.
Big asterisk over my head here. Like, this is as of today.
Yeah. Because things are changing so quickly. And I think that's a lot of the almost like internal angst that a lot of us are feeling. Like, as a business owner, you're already stretched multiple different ways, managing team, managing client projects, whatever it is, also creating content and trying your best to batch and do different strategies to make it not feel like another hamster wheel. And then we've got this like very fast moving AI situation happening. So it's just adds to the potential like online business stress that we feel. So that's the challenge that's going on. I want to give you a little bit of the floor on your podcast here. I'm looking at some of your episode titles, and they just feel so actionable. And I love that. And I do see you do a lot of solo episodes, which aligns with, hey, you're the business owner, you're offering these services. So you want to be the authority, and you want to be the one answering these questions like we've talked about with SEO. But if you would share a little bit about the show and maybe about your strategy behind it, just so that we could maybe copy and tweak what you're doing for our own businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. It's called the Small Business Sweet Spot. And it's basically finding the sweet spot of our small businesses. So I've been going through a lot of personal self-therapy, if you will, or a lot of self-thinking, self-reflection over the past couple of years. And it was starting before I even started the podcast, but I really enjoy listening to podcasts so much, and other people sharing their information around personal life, around business life, because as a solopreneur, like, they kind of intertwine quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so my strategy was to provide information not only around digital marketing to make it a little bit more doable or seem less overwhelming or less, that's why I do the single episodes in a more, there you go, there's your information. Like you don't need to get through a whole hour of somebody eating their, I don't know, their sandwich, whatever it is these days. And then the other ones where the bonus episodes come in is featuring other businesses that can help us improve, whether that be a yoga teacher or a podcaster or just all kinds of various things around our business that are complementary to digital marketing and or personal enhancement. Mm-hmm. And so when I first started, it was really funny because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was trying to prep and over prepare. And I made it way harder than it needed to be. Everybody's like, you need to do this, you need to do that. And then I thought, oh, I'm getting analysis or like the what is it, decision paralysis or something like that.
Analysis paralysis, decision fatigue. Frozen, all of those things.
Yeah. And so finally I just did it and I thought, well, whatever, like it's just going to be what it is. And I can feel a difference even now that I've done it for a year and a half. It'll be 2 years in October. And I can feel a difference in some of the content. At the beginning, it was very structured and I really didn't quite know how I wanted it to be inside. I just knew I wanted to give information. Like I just wanted to have answers available. And it's kind of grown into just kind of a helping thing. And then I like to feature other people on it sometimes. One time I did like a curation. So I had people like it was a topic around using AI in our small business. Like, why are we so afraid to use it? Should we use it? There was a lot of different, people are still struggling with that, whether or not to use it or not in just terms of ethics and things of that nature. Copywriters in particular. I have a human copywriter for my blog posts, but I do use AI for some copy for like socials and some other things. But I firmly am 100% behind a human copywriter. One, because I just love my copywriter to death. I think she's amazing, but she gets me. I don't have to sit there and spend 20,000 hours to like refigure out how to do this blog post. That's just not where I want to spend my time. And they don't do critical thinking. Now that might change 10 years down the road, but I really appreciate the feedback that my copywriter can give me and new angles to come up with instead of just regurgitating what's already out there. So I really enjoy that. And then, it just kind of evolved. Every once in a while, I'll do something new, like I'll change up the artwork and it's just kind of an evolving process as I get new ideas and things. And sometimes I do lives. So I'll bring some other people on and we'll do a live cast and then I'll just repurpose it onto the podcast.
Yeah. So I like how you even will say today, like it's evolving, sometimes I do this and I've tried that. And I sound different now, 2 years in. Congratulations, by the way, than I did when I first started. So how did you get comfortable with that? Just kind of putting it out there, letting it evolve and not thinking that it should have been perfect from day one. Was that a process that you personally went through as well? Or did you start with this beautiful frame of mind, or how did you do that?
Definitely not. There's a lot of turmoil in my brain, basically. When I first started it, it was kind of funny because I was like, okay, somebody's going to watch this. But then I thought, well, no, they're not. It's brand new. Nobody's going to even see it. So I had to like lie to myself and be like, nobody is going to see this. And so why should I be so worried about it? And then I thought, well, if somebody doesn't like it, or if I don't like it, I can literally take it down. It's not the end of the world. At the time, I thought it would be the end of the world, but I had to really sit there and tell myself and keep telling myself, like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Like, think about all these people that you keep hearing about that started whenever they did. I think there's a couple YouTubers out there that I follow, and you look back at their old ones, and they are like, they're just funny. They're older, and that's just the nature of the game. And I think that's just in business as well. And I think it was finally just accepting that it is the what it is. And it just takes time and it takes some repeated self-talk for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Because I think that's a big thing that's holding people back and some of the big questions that I get. And a lot of what I see that makes people not start is that they are afraid of who's going to see it. And they are afraid of not being their most professional, knowledgeable self or seeming awkward or whatever it is. So I love that you're just like, it's going to evolve. It's fine. I'm figuring it out still. And you're 2 years in. So I think that's a great little like testimony to the podcast personal growth process.
Yeah.
So
if it does feel like I would say like if there's like anxiousness, I think that's one thing that I didn't, when you were talking about like what's holding you back, like if it feels like, oh my God, I'm going to die, like I can't do it. Like then you have to sit and think, oh, why do I feel like that? Like specifically calling it out and being like, am I going to die? No. But is it because of this or that? And I think if you keep questioning what you're feeling, that really helps to get it out as well, because then you'll finally see, oh, it probably boils down to self-worth or shame, which was my case, which is a lot of cases for people. There's a lot of shame and a lot of self-worth issues. But once you can start working it out and getting it out, then it just becomes unusually just so much easier. It's really kind of fascinating to me how this like, that whole thing about why we do what we do and why we can't get our marketing out there. And, you know, I'm in marketing and I was like, well, why am I not doing it? Like, it's just really fascinating. So just keep talking to yourself, keep saying you can do it and you can.
I agree. And a lot of times when you're afraid of something, it kind of comes down to that worthiness question. And then you just have to like, am I not worthy to be on camera? Am I not worthy enough and good enough to record this? Like, should I really just take a back seat and let someone else be the voice on this subject? Like, probably not. And when you can boil it down to those questions, I think that's really powerful. You're like, dang, I've just let this hold me back for so long.
Yeah. And I think about all the people who are doing it, who I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a terrible podcast. Great for them. They're doing it. But I'm like, I got nothing from it. So obviously I can do it. I could, you know, like, and it's like, not that mine is better. It's just different, right? We all have a different perspective on how we want to like do the thing or share our services or share our skills. And I think that if you can see that there's so many different people doing it in so many different ways, that your way is also allowed to be out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So with your show, is there anything that you've done that has really created this tangible result, whether it's starting guesting or whether it's specific types of episodes and then you're getting replies to emails or anything that's like, maybe you knew it was a tactical move at the time, or maybe you didn't, but it created traction?
Two things, and I didn't know how much traction they would pull, but they're very evident to me. And when I say traction, it's not like it's an overnight success, right? So just to put that expectation out there and that understanding. But the two things that really made a difference was the podcast guesting. And I heard your last, one of your last podcast episodes about that. Yeah, everybody and their mother's doing it, but it is a good one, right? Like guesting on podcasts is the thing to do. It's awesome. And then the other one is collaboration. So I did one that was complimentary that did really well. And it was around the idea of SEO and web designers and copywriters. So I got each of one of them and we talked about how closely our industries are aligned. And so we did a live and we had kind of like a roundtable discussion and we each had our respective audiences come to it. And then when I created the live, I gave them all the assets that they could use to share on their own channels if they wanted. And it was really just, not only was it really great from a marketing building perspective and being able to have the content and having them share it on their channels, but I had so much fun with it, like having a discussion with these other people that I work with in random ways, but actually sitting and talking about the industry and what I do with them. That was just plain fun. So I didn't see that one as much. And changing up the platform as well. So one time I did I curated some responses from people and had them record them and give them to me. And then I created an episode around their responses. And I really like that format for something different. And I got some good feedback on that. And then they also had a way to say, hey, I was featured in this podcast. And then they shared it in their channels as well.
Yeah. So I like that. You have a few ways that you just kind of allowed the creativity to happen and say, like, I'm going to gather people and we're going to either go live, or it's like you created like a little mini summit is really what that was.
Yeah.
Or, you know, this collaboration on the show or however you choose to run it. But either way, you're networking. right?
Mhm.
So I think that's such an important piece to remember is like, how can you feature other people? How can you align with like parallel services, service providers that you know and like that you would
Yeah.
recommend? I think that's awesome. That is a great way to kind of create traction in our business. And more, I think we're always looking for like, what's the trick? What's the behind the scenes button that I didn't know was there? And the longer I'm here, I am constantly reminded that there's really actually not a trick. And it's more about that network and nurturing that network of fellow service providers, collaborators, people at conference, like wherever you find them, but working on that network, I think is where we really find traction in our business. I want to hear a little about your website power up plan. This seems very accessible and awesome. And I want to give you a chance to share about it because I think it's really, really useful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's useful. I created it. I wanted a way for people to be able to work with me if they wanted to in a way that didn't feel like they had to do like a 6-month program or 12-month. I think there's is it a stigma? I'm not sure what the word is, but I think there's some sort of weird expectation out there that when you do SEO, you have to work with somebody for so many months and do all the things. And I just wanted it to be so much simpler and to show people that they could see what they can do on their website. So what I did was I created a website power up plan. It's a mini service. It's a one-time thing. It's basically, it's like 3 or 4 pages, but we have like a sort of call and a form that you fill out. And I give 3 actionable things to do to your website. And it is specific to your website because I even ask about revenue and how many you close as you make, because there's a way to track back the amount of traffic that you get from organic all the way to the sale. And so that way you can see what potential you have for revenue in your website if you showed up for certain search terms. And so the 3 things that I provide in the Power Up Plan are meant to be probably not core foundational stuff. It's probably going to be things that are going to move a little bit faster or have a little bit more impact sooner than later so that you can see some of these things, because sometimes it does take time. It's not an overnight thing. And I think that's what becomes frustrating with SEO and website visibility. So the Power Up Plan is meant to give you just 3 takeaways, boom, boom, boom. And then there's ways that we can, of course, at the end, you can either choose to do it with me or you can go and do these on your own. So I give you the actual how to do it, maybe not the explicit steps that I would necessarily do, but you're able to go on your own and do it. Like I don't believe in strong holding or whatever the word is, gatekeeping information. So like you can just go do it. So we have the like a 2 or 3 hour call too, so that if you have questions and want to know more, you can certainly get those answers for yourself. So it's a really good, I think, Power Up Plan, and it kind of gives you another set of eyeballs too for your website. It's $99. However, we did talk about this. We're going to give everybody a code. It's at FinPro, so FINPRO. And then for the next, at the time of when this episode drops in 30 days, that you can get 25% off of that. So it's just really, I think it's really worth it. And it's like one time. So you're not like, stuck in a contract, or you're not stuck into so many months. And if nothing else, you get some insight into your website and why it might not be showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is amazing. It's a really low lift for us that might be buying it. And then we get calls with you. So I think that's a great way for us to like get to know you, see if we like you. And then maybe we can see some traction here and, decide to work further with you. So I think that's an awesome strategy as far as a business owner offering like a low lift service. And then that might lead to more services. But I think it's also a great way for us to just get a little bit of SEO help for our site and see how bad is it really?
Usually not that bad.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Barb. I really appreciate this. And I do want to encourage everybody to check out the website Power Up Plan. There will be links in the show notes. The code is in the show notes just in case you forget it. And Barb, where else should we find and follow you? Are you active on LinkedIn? I think you are. Where should we check you out?
Yep. I guess the easiest way is just to hop over to Small Business Sweet Spot, the other podcast. I have that. And then I'm active on Instagram, sometimes LinkedIn. It's been a little bit different lately, just knowing that, reevaluating my marketing channels. So more on Instagram at Compass Digital Strategies. And then, of course, there's my website, compassdigitalstrategies.com.
Very cool. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and about your show with us today. It was wonderful.
Thanks for having me on. Great questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending your time with me today on Podcasting for Financial Professionals. If you walked away with one idea that helps you get more visible, increase your authority, or turn your podcast into a real lead generating machine, then your time was worth it. Before you go, let's make sure you have strong intros, outros, and a trailer for your podcast that pulls in your ideal clients. Grab the Attraction Messaging Blueprint. It gives you the formula, examples, and worksheets to make the most important segments of your show count. Download it for free right now at podcastabundance.com/attraction-messaging-blueprint.